Hello human, welcome to our world. We are tiny zeros and ones.
Hi everybody, it's Deborah Carter here from PreparationTech. I am speaking with Miriam Tocino today. I'm excited to be speaking with her because next week we are going to be speaking at the Women in Tech Regatta Amsterdam virtual event about the future of education, saying that school is only one way to teach kids about tech, but there are many others. And Miriam is going to tell us about the way that she teaches tech. So let's just get into it. Miriam, welcome. Tell us who you are and what you do in 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for having me today here. This is exciting. So here's the story, because today we are going to be talking about technology and how amazing that is. But I haven't always been this passionate about the world of computers. So my dad always wanted me to go into computer science. That's what happened. And he used to say, Miriam is the future. But I thought that computers were gray and boring. And now we know that he was right. And I missed the point. So instead of going into computer science, I studied architecture. And it wasn't until I was 30 that I started to get interested in tech. And I taught myself how to code. And I discovered that working with computers could be something fun and something full of creativity and something that allowed me to help other people around me, and make their lives better, right? And those are the things that I initially associated with architecture and not with computer science. So ever since, I've worked as a software developer and also as a programming teacher. And I've helped hundreds of students how to switch their careers into tech, as I did myself. 3 years ago, when I had my son, it was clear that I started to think about how I'd like to introduce him to the world of computers and how I could bring some of the elements that I used in my teaching, right, in those programming lessons, into people's homes and help them open up the conversation about technology with their kids. So one night, together with my husband, we started saying, he's a game programmer, wouldn't it be cool if we're writing stories happening inside a computer about how computers do math or graphics or how the internet works? And what if they were told by a 0 and a 1 and they could live in the binary world? And that's how Zerus and Ona were born. They are a 0 and a 1. They are the two main characters of a picture book series, and they live inside your computer.
Awesome. And I see to your actual right, we see
Yes.
some copies of the book. So
Yes.
as you said, you're a book author and you're writing stories that introduce kids to technology and getting them interested in it. Tell us a bit about the book series. I mean, I've seen the books. They're really super amazing.
So there are 2 books. The first one is for now. So there is a plan of 5 books, between 5, 7. It's a little bit unclear, but there is a plan coming in the coming 2 years to expand the series with books and also with games. We can talk about that later if you want. But to focus on the book now, Zerus Gets a Virus is the first one, and it was published last year in autumn, and it is a story about online safety. So Zerus is infected by a virus, and Ona takes him on a trip and around the computer, trying to find what's going on and how to cure him. And throughout the story and illustrations, parents and children, they learn some of the key internet safety issues to be safe online. So parents often have little time, and it is hard to make changes in the routine, especially if you have a kid that really works very well with the routine. So the book includes a guide and a glossary of terms in the back to help you frame the conversation. And it is also great for older kids to read that part as well when they get a little bit older. And then there's this new title that it went out last week, and that's Welcome to Our World. And this one has a slightly different format. Originally designed as a board book, so little kids cannot tear pages apart. So the text is shorter, and it's written in the form of a poem, which turns into a song. And here's how it works. So first, we read the book with our children, and they become friends with Zerus and Ona, and you talk with them about zeros and ones and how they are a lot of them, and they all live inside your computer. And then you learn that the story is also a song, and you sing it and you dance it
Clack, clack, clock, clock, clack, clack, clock, clock, clook.
And then part of the melody for the music, for the song, has been done with live coding snippets.
Wow.
And the thing is that kids actually don't know anything about it when they hear about it the first time. So then they learn the song, they dance it because it comes with a choreography. And then the parent or the caregiver or the educator, you know, says like, hey, do you know that the song, they play part of it with code? Let's see how they do that. And I'm working now in the last pieces of the video tutorials to help parents and educators start playing the music with their kids in their own computers and being able to work with those code snippets.
I love it, because what you're doing is you're first hooking them with the story, getting them moving, so very kinetic, and then showing them the code in this fun and creative environment. Fantastic. I love it. I love it.
And then I have also many girls, teenagers, loving it because of the illustrations, because of the storytelling, because of the, I think, a little bit of being a role model, right, for them, and giving them the hope that if they have a creative project in mind, you know, it can be possible, right? And then I always tell them, look, you better get coding. You know, so.
This is the message. This is the message. Fantastic. So
yes.
You're here in front of me. You obviously love what you do. Tell us how you got to be Miriam Tocino. First the architect, then the software developer, like programmer, and now an artist, illustrator, book writer. What was your childhood like? What were you interested in? What were your hobbies?
I never got asked this question, so that was thank you for asking. And I've been thinking about it because you sent the questions like a couple of days ago, and I was like, okay, so let's try to make it useful also for people, right? And I've always loved learning, and it could be anything since I was very little. So I loved math, but I also loved languages, and I also loved art. I loved every subject, the Buddha. And I think that's because what I enjoyed was the process of learning itself. So the topic didn't matter as much for me, right? And I think I got this from my mom, I have to say. So
Why?
Now she's retired, but her whole life she was a school teacher. And she was very methodic, very didactic. And she was spending most of the afternoons with us. I've got a smaller sister. And we used to do our homework next to her. So she was preparing her classes and we were doing our homeworks. And she was teaching maths, she was teaching science, she was teaching languages, she was teaching, you name it, right? And I grew up seeing all her notebooks with her beautiful handwriting and all the colors and the calendars and all the posits and all that. And her whole way of working was truly inspiring to me. And as a child, I didn't have anything else. So for me, it was like, this is the way to do it, right? But now when I think back, she taught me the art of learning.
The greatest gift.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Mm.
And I was very lucky also with other teachers. You know, they were also very inspirational. So I was very lucky in every subject, right? So that's one thing. And then my hobbies, on the other hand, were also very diverse. So I loved reading, and I always had a book with me. And I also loved drawing, and I loved photography as well for a little while. And about the drawing, I remember when I was little, now that I'm living temporarily with my parents, I have all my books when I was a kid here. And I have images of myself picking up paper and then putting it on top of those picture books and then tracing the characters. I have images of that in my mind. And then on the other hand, my dad loved math tricks.
Oh.
So, you know, those tricks that, you know, like they're very little and they're very tiny, but, you know, it's like to get you get thinking quickly and, like, okay, so, and I remember spending a lot of our holidays camping and doing all those math tricks. So both my parents, and here's why I think these stories can be important for the people listening. Both my parents and my teachers became my first role models. And it is easy to forget that in the busy day-to-day life in which we are in, right? Especially now, even more, right? With the whole pandemic thing. And that's why now with Zerus Ona, I like to say that as much as the project it is about reaching the children and encourage them to become curious about technology and get them excited about it, it's also about reaching the parents and the caregivers and the educators, because we ourselves need to be excited about technology, need to be talking about it positively, and we need to look tech savvy if we want to be able to inspire our children. It is very important that we acknowledge that responsibility.
What is the mindset of someone who is successful in being able to migrate between these different domains? You started in architecture, then you went into programming, and now you're in illustration and digital storytelling. What is the mindset? What are the personal characteristics of people who are adaptive like this?
The first one that comes to mind is curiosity. You need to be curious. You need to be eager to learn, right? So there's this saying that says, to get enthusiastic about something, learn more about it. And I think if you want to be that type of person that just have many projects, because I have many projects in my mind, and, like, I don't think careers are linear. I wish someone told me that when I was 18, because choosing architecture was such a big of a deal. And look at it right now, right? Like, it was just a tiny piece in the equation of my life right now, right? So curiosity, and these, we are constantly evolving, right? So we are never the person that we were yesterday. So I think we need to be open to explore, and curiosity drives that exploration, right? And living life like an adventure. Then discipline. I'm a big fan of, and now especially for the last 3 years, I learned a lot about how to sustain a creative practice, and how to sit daily with yourself, and check in. And now I do it with Zerus Ona, but it could be whatever, right? Like about, hey, how are you feeling today? Like, how is this going? Do we need to work on something that we missed yesterday? Then put service first. Mm-hmm. So as a writer, specifically, to make it specific, but it can be with anything, you want your stories to be read and resonate with people. And it is great to have hobbies, leave them apart. You can learn how to play the guitar in your free time. But if you want to use your creativity in your professional work, you need to be willing to help people. And that's in the front. And then light-minded. So don't take yourself too seriously. And that's a hard one for me. Yeah? This is something that Zerus Ona taught me, because talking with a 0 and a 1, you either have a willingness to have fun, and finding joy in your work. And so yeah, that's, but for a long time, I didn't have these 4 so clear, right? And for me now, it's really important to give you an example, Deborah. It's very easy to get lost in how to draw an eye, or how to draw a foot, or how to draw a hand, right? But then in those moments in which you are spending too much time there, then you ask yourself, is this helping people? Good enough. Let's move on, Miriam, right? And that's how you deal as well with perfectionism, right? And knowing when it's good enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the technology that you use to create your books. So this is really for the parents out there who may have kids who are interested in art and illustration and this kind of thing. What are the tools, the specific tech tools that you use to produce Zerus Ona?
I like to keep things very simple because otherwise it doesn't happen. So, and I have a very defined process now to write my stories. So they all start unplugged. So they all start in my journal. And I learned this from a couple of writers. So as a writer, I've learned in the past 3 years that there are specific types of writers, and then your kid will need to know like what kind of kid there are writers that they are more linear, that they really work with a structure and with a plan, and they know all the pieces that they're going to come together, and then it's about just making it into a story. And then there are also intuitive writers, and I'm one of them, and that's the one that it is not so famous kind of thing, right? Because then we are very much, I think, we approach things in that other linear way, right? In which you have those pieces and then it's just about connecting them. But for me, that didn't work. I was not able to create, anytime that I actually sat and started to create that structure, that didn't work. So for me, how it works is like, there's this writer, Lauren Zapala, she talks about it. She talks about intuitive writing and intuitive writers. And then there is also this other writer, John Gonzalez. John Gonzalez was the narrative director at Guerrilla Games. My husband used to work there. John Gonzalez used to work there. My husband still works there. And I met with him in the early beginnings of Zerus Ona. And he gave me this piece of advice, which was, Miriam, try to journal with your characters. Try to speak with them. Wow. And I'm so grateful for that. So now everything starts with me having a conversation with Zerus Ona and letting them guide the story. And I mean, it might sound like a little woo here, but it's a technique that I want to share with the world, because there might be many people out there having that same situation in which really they are close to a deadline, trying to fit everything together, and then maybe they just need to talk with their characters to get the answers. So that's about the non-technical part of it, but I wanted to mention it because I think it is important to understand the whole process. And then the sketches, they come together with the story. So I illustrate and I write the stories, and they come together at the same time. So very intuitive writers, they are also very visual. So then your story doesn't come in the form of words, but it comes in the form of pictures. And then having that in the journal also helped me. Once it's there, I make pictures with my iPhone camera of that journal little sketch, and then I put it on my iPad Pro. So I got an iPad Pro 1 year in the project. Before it was all notebook, black and white, very rough. But once I thought, okay, this can be something, I really wanna do something with this Zerus Ona. It's not a hobby, right? Then getting an iPad was the best thing ever. So it speeds things up amazingly. Mm-hmm. And then there's one app, which is Affinity Designer. And then during my architecture years, I always worked with Adobe. And then I was always struggling moving my drawings from Illustrator, which is vector-based, to Photoshop, which is pixel-based. And you needed to get that export right. Solved by Affinity Designer. Thank you. So Affinity Designer has a workspace that is a vector, and there is just 2 icons, and then you just switch from the vector workspace to the. So I have stamps of Zerus Ona. I have zeros and ones. One, I got the anatomy right of the characters. Well, I want to make a lot of books, right? So I needed to find a way to actually make my process really smooth and streamlined. So I have those stamps. And then anytime that I need a 0 or I need a 1, I have them in different positions So just like lateral, and then I just put the stamp on my vector-based workspace. I scale it down, I scale it up, make the size that I want so it doesn't lose the resolution. And then I switch to pixel workspace. All very technical, but I hope this is useful.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. So not only do you've got the right software, but you've got the right processes to speed up eventually your work, which is really super important. Wow. And you know what I'm loving about what you said? That it was actually a game designer, video game designer, that gave you direction and coached you in terms of intuitive design.
Yes.
I think that's fantastic. So there's a lot of lessons.
He's a writer. Yes, he's a writer, but he works in that, in
space.
the game development industry. Yes.
Wow. So I had no idea. So who would have thought that there's these creative processes in actual the tech field that are transferable to different areas of tech, right? Fantastic, fantastic. I wanted to ask you a question about how you treat gender, because I think your book does a great job of appealing to both boys and girls. So tell us a bit about that, your thinking and your approach to attracting the interest of both boys and girls.
Here's the beauty of a book, that with a book, we can take care of those three things. We can counter stereotypes using characters. We can reframe the skills that we normally associate with specific careers, the stories we tell. And then, because our children, they build a reality from books, we can use them to explain the world around them and give them a better understanding. Those are the things that I would like to keep in mind when I started, but also when I'm working in any new book in the series. So when I sat down to think about Zerus Ona and the concept behind it, I knew I wanted my books as many kids as possible, so that as many kids as possible could identify with my books and with the characters, right? And then having a 0 and a 1 was a beautiful thing, in that sense, because now I have kids that either want to be zeros or either want to be ones, right? But there's not that direct connection. And then if you look out there are many wonderful books already about featuring a female character doing a specific job and doing amazing things. And I asked myself, how could I add to those? How could I do something different that still plays a role in the same kind of arena, but adding something else? Because I think it is important at the same time to reach out to boys too. So in my stories, there are 2 characters because I want to portray an equal relationship between a boy and a girl in dealing with computers. They can also be read since they are very little. And if you go to a 3-year-old girl, she doesn't know that she is not supposed to like computers. And if you go to a 3-year-old boy, he doesn't know that girls are not supposed to like computers. So women in tech movements are great. We are going to be participating in the Women in Tech Regatta Amsterdam. So I'm all for it. I'm a big supporter. But having worked in the tech industry, I think there's also work to be done in educating the men and getting all work together successfully in this field. And I wanted to help with that part of the equation.
And you certainly have. What a great point to make, actually. Talking about education, do you have any advice for schools? How can schools help kids with storytelling around technology, with exposing them to stories, but also encouraging them to create their own stories about technology?
I've been thinking about this one since yesterday, and I have one proposal to cover everything that we've been talking today, right? I think having a project, in this case, it can be a book, it can be a story, it can be a graphic novel. They're also very popular right now. Whatever the child wants to pursue during that school, in that case, right, with technology, I want to propose that you let it expand for one school year.
Wow.
Because when you are doing something creative, time is an important factor. And as a child, I tend to have these, you do this assignment here, you do this project, you deliver it, you forget about it, let's move on, right? But if there's something that I've learned with Zerus Ona, it's about the creative process and how important it is. So it is important for a story to grow and get the shape that it's meant to have. And also, I learned this from the tech industry, to work in iterations, right? I didn't learn that in school, right? Like there's one iteration, you ship it, you know, and you go and then you ship it again. So you have these milestones, and there's something magical about revisiting that project, right? With fresh eyes, with something that you learned during the last week, right? To see you grow, right? You don't grow. I think it's a little bit more difficult to see the growth if you just had that project, you deliver it, and then you move to the next one, and then you deliver it. It's harder to see the growth of a child or the growth of you as a creative person, right? While if you, right now, I have a folder where I saved everything from Zerus Ona since the very beginning 3 years ago. And if you see that folder, it gives you feelings of, it gives you confidence, right? You build confidence. So here I want to say, okay, you have, like, just to frame it up. So you have that project going through your whole year, right? Great. It's there. And then along the year, they can learn about the craft. And then it is very important to learn how to research something, how to learn something, to learn about something. And then they will learn how to write, and they will learn what makes a great story, how to tell a good story. You know, you need a problem, you need, you know, the different elements in the story. You can teach storyboarding, how to translate those texts, you know, into pictures. But again, the action of revisiting all that again and again and again, periodically, I think it is as important. So you need to learn the tools that can support your creative process. And I think we need to teach those to children. Mm-hmm. Especially, we talk a lot about now about what is needed for the world that it's coming, right? In which, while careers are changing, you know, you're going to be a lifelong learner, and having built that confidence, you know, in a creative process, and teaching that to our kids. So I'm talking about, and let's make it very specific, but tools that really help me is tools like journaling, right? Tools like how to connect with your intuition and what you want, how to listen to yourself, right? And how to build your confidence. So I was 2 years, just a little story. I was 2 weeks ago in the Finding Ada conference. And it is an international conference worldwide about women in tech. And one of the interviewers, I asked her, we talked a lot about how to get girls into tech, but we don't talk that much about how to keep them in tech. And I asked her what they were doing at her company. She was one of the top leaders in one tech company. And here's what she told me, Deborah. They weren't working with them about technical skills. They were developing programs to build their confidence.
Wow. And this is a company. Fantastic. Wow.
So we talk a lot about technical skills, you know, like what needs, how kids need to learn about code. And I think those soft skills are starting to become more and more important. And the sooner we start teaching them, the better. Mm-hmm. So I want to tell you, and with that I finish this question, some of the sentences that I have to repeat myself daily, or, you know, quite often. So one of them is, and I have them in a piece of paper, which is, one of them is progress, not perfection. Clarity comes from action, not thought. Let the project evolve by itself. You know, we are in this culture which is about just push a little bit more, push a little. I learned that there is something really good about letting a project sit for a while, right? And that's, we go back to the idea of working for a school year. Show up, and then you're good enough, which goes back to the confidence part, right? So those things are things that I struggle with. So I think it's about sitting with schools and, you know, getting a list of those things that we as adults right now in creative industries like you are, right, have to deal with, and say, look, is there a way in which we can actually do something about it and help with that, right?
Fantastic, fantastic. I love the idea of that. This would be so beneficial, and it would really give kids agency, which is so important. My last question for you: do you have specific actionable recommendation or advice for parents for kids who they think love tech but want to be on the creative side as designers, illustrators, writers, etc.? What specific would you advise them to do in terms of software, apps, clubs, programs, whatever?
The first one, again, it's not tech related, but it is something that really helped me with Zerus Ona. So I mentioned that there was a moment in which I thought, okay, this is not a game anymore. This is not a hobby. This is not, okay, it's fun, but I really want to do something about it. You need to create momentum, and you need to have a commitment with the craft. And for that, what really helped me was a 100-day project. Which is basically the 100-day project. Is basically, there's even a website for it, and I signed up for the website. They were sending it. It starts in January every year, I think, and then they just encouraged you to keep going, right? But you can do it without them. And basically, you tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna do something for 100 days straight, no matter what. And for me, that with Zerus Ona was, okay, I'm gonna do one sketch, whatever it is, you know, and if it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. If it's 2 hours, it's 2 hours, but daily. And then you have like a wall or a place in your home where you start, you know, putting that work up. And then again, we come again to having it span a long time, right? Like there's something powerful about, because as a child, you can have many interests, and I think the commitment is something that they can struggle with, you know. Like if I would have gone to my dad or to my mom and said, look, I want to be an illustrator, right? They didn't really, it's hard to see, right? It's hard to see, like, is this something for her, you know, as a parent I'm talking, right? But if you as a child said, like, I'm going to be an illustrator, or you don't say anything, but on your own, you start doing your 100-day project in your bathroom, right? And then one day, you know, or inside your cover, you know, and then one day you open that up, you know, it's 100 sketches of something, you know, and that's when you tell your dad, or I want to be an illustrator. Maybe it's a different response, don't you think?
Absolutely, because you've demonstrated your interest. There's tangible evidence that you are into this. Yeah, fantastic.
So that's the first thing. And it also helped me. So I didn't do 100, I did 64. But still, you know, reaching 64, again, progress, not perfection. Seeing those 64 was for me like, okay, let's make a book, you know, like I can do it, right? And then I mentioned it before, I know it's very expensive getting an iPad Pro, but it changes your life as an illustrator. It makes things possible. So right now I never have a blank page, so the process is just like, and if anyone, I'll give later my email address, but if anyone watching, you know, have questions about this, more than happy to help, because there's very little written about it, right? And people normally struggle with how to start. and it's not that difficult once you know. So getting an iPad Pro, getting Affinity Designer, speed things up like enormously.
Even for kids, can kids master Affinity Designer? Because I'm thinking,
It depends on the kid. It depends on the kid.
Yeah.
It depends on the kid, Deborah.
Yeah, yeah. But okay, if it's not Affinity Designer.
If it's not Affinity Designer, so my kid with 3 years old, he's having the pen and, you know, playing an Affinity Designer. And then, you know, one day, that's why I say with kids, you don't really know when they are connecting dots. It's so hard. It's so hard. He's learning Dutch with one app right now. And then I let him play by himself without, you know, I was like, okay, I need to do the dishes. You know, you play a little bit by yourself, you know. He got things right that I didn't expect. So that's why right now, age ranges are so difficult, I think. Because they are also like, how you say, digital natives or
yeah.
So maybe you, and again, Deborah with Affinity Designer, I'm not doing half of the things that you can do with it. I just learned the 3 icons that I need to use, and so it's not that so I'm gonna do a course about it. So that's coming.
Lifelong learning. Lifelong
learning. So yeah, those are the things. So iPad Pro and Affinity Designer. But you can already start with a notebook and a pen and a pencil.
Absolutely.
And a 100-day project. So no excuses.
Absolutely. I'm going to do this 100-day project because I love this. Miriam, this was a fantastic interview. Thank you so very much. We learned a lot. We learned about creative processes. We learned about commitment, curiosity, being agile, being able to manipulate or to move between different things. And I think it's also about dreaming, because you had this idea and you actually executed that and made this dream possible. And just show us, hold up those books, because they are just so beautiful for us.
This is one. Let me show you.
It must be such a feeling of accomplishment to hold the book that you created from scratch in your hand.
It's really nice. It's really nice. So it all starts with a boy looking into a computer and wondering what it is. And then you move on. And then you have pictures. This is how a computer inside looks like.
Beautiful illustrations.
So we normally have this idea that computers are black, right? So the whole thing was like, from now on, and this is, here I'm going to show, you see this here? This is how it started.
Wow.
So then you can see the progress.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And then this is the other one. Oops. Which was the first one. So yeah.
Bravo. Bravo. I'm so looking forward to doing this panel with you. Thank you so much, Miriam. I can't wait. I'm going to be the person dancing and singing with the book, and I'm definitely not 3 or 4 years old.
So before I go, I'd like to say that if anyone watching today want to say hi, I'm on Twitter at Miriam Tocino. And you can also send me an email at Miriam at zerusandona.com. And I'd love to connect. So thank you so much for having me today, Deborah. This was fun.